taxes are the only certainty. Will 20% of people have society? And I have made it on my own in this world. Will not take care of time around a 2-year-old. I'm gonna start the old nation and do my own thing, and I will be king. I'm gonna start the old nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna start the old nation with the self-preservation. Well, let me talk a bit about the weather. You must admit it's not very clever. Don't get me wrong, it's not an anti-British song. Well, there is nowhere I would rather be wrong. I'm gonna start the old nation and do my own thing, and I will be king. I'm gonna start the old nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna start the old nation with the self-preservation. There are just a few things that I would like to say about the UK and how I think it has gone astray. Don't get me wrong, it ain't all bad. I love the crazy fads, like England always buggering up, but you know we're gonna win the World Cup. I'm gonna start the old nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna start the old nation with the self-preservation.
Keep the red flag flying here.
And hello and welcome everybody to the 54th edition of Political Unmuted. Amazing, isn't it? We've had a week off for the tennis and the football, and but we're back and we're ready to go. And my golly, what a show we've got for you tonight. As for myself, my moment of the week, I ran apparently in the 3:45 at Beverley this afternoon. The John Clare came 7th. So there you go. Even worse than my election results. Let's welcome the team. New team member, Mark Lungley. Hello, sir.
Hi there, John.
And tell us something about yourself so we know who you are, Mark.
Okay, well, I'm Mark Lungley. Most people know me from the Black Country, but like certain other socialist republics, they like to send people out. I'm currently just over the border in South Staffordshire and have been just re-elected as the ComSec and Political Education Secretary as of about an hour ago for South Staff CLP. And also I'm one of the team that's going to be bringing socialist think tank West Midlands, which is going to be fun, which is not just going to be the Black Country, it's going to be Birmingham, Staffordshire, and also, of course, Coventry as well.
And you're going to be having a kind of political unmuted West Midlands, I understand.
Hopefully, that is going to be the last piece of the puzzle. But,
just sort of, it's so important that we don't just sort of talk globally, but that we get our roots down into the community and show that socialism matters, sort of ordinary people are doing ordinary things on ordinary councils. Just tell us about your role as political education officer for the CLP. I mean, what do you see that as being to do?
I think that one of the things is, it's something that the Labour Party, I think, has always not been that good about, is telling what we actually stand for, the basics of socialism. And I mean, this is why I love being part of this organisation. I love being able to, normally when I'm typing away with my dyslexic ramblings, so thanks Paul for being able to translate them sometimes, because often I'm talking about the last topic when you've moved on. But it's trying, what is socialism? We need to be talking about this, how it works, that it's not just free stuff. And I think that we do need to do that. And we sort of like, people join the Labour Party and they get a welcome to the CLP, this is what you do here if you're lucky, and that's it. And I don't think there should be. I think there needs to be more. But how many political education secretaries are just in name only?
I agree. Absolutely right that we should get discussing and we should get learning. A whole load of Labour Party members who don't have a clue what the Labour Party stands for, or Labour Party rules even. Right, a number of comments about what socialism is as well. Thank you very much, everybody. And I notice you come from Bradford, Neil Terry. Me too. All the best people come out of Bradford. Let's say hello to everybody else. To the boss, our hero, Paul Daly, who abandoned us, didn't you, last week? Come on, fess up.
Yeah, I was on centre court last week, so it was pretty nice. I had a pretty nice time.
You watched the women, not the men.
I saw one men's match that was finishing off from the day before. Medvedev and Herkot, is he called? And then I saw the eventual champion Ash Barty play, and then I saw another women's game which was Sabalenka, and then I saw the doubles as well, which was really good with Coco Gauff as well. So it was really good, brilliant day.
So did you go to work the next day?
Yeah.
So what time did you get back home?
About 2:00. It's all right. I've been in a lot later than that and gone to work in my youth. We used to do gigs in London that finished at like 2 a.m. and then drive back through the night and yeah. So yeah.
Anyway, you enjoyed it.
It was brilliant. Yeah.
Yes, sort of. My wife went to Wimbledon one year. It was the experience of a lifetime for her. Sam, hello, welcome.
I'm just getting really stuck into all these comments. Look at all these comments. Oh my gosh.
I know.
They've missed us.
We will be coming back to you for the second hour. And just saying hello to and hello, Stuart. Oh, Stuart seems to have frozen. You there, Stuart? Hello?
He is there. Oh, he's just gone slow.
He's going very slow. Right. Okay. Well, I won't ask him what his moment of the week is yet. We don't have a week for him to
catching up.
So, Paul, what was your moment of the week?
Do you want the little jingle first, or shall we just go?
Oh no. Tell that we've had a week off. Paul, moment of the week.
My moment of the week's got to be it's not the football, but it's the reaction to the football, and I think what we've seen is a real clear dividing line between where people stand in the nation. We've had some people who are incredibly proud of the people, regardless of like their background, and football can be a very divisive thing, but for a lot of people it was very inclusive. But we've seen that divisiveness as well. We've seen the racist abuse of players. But we've also seen, like, I think Tyrone Mings has been promoted to, he must be Chancellor of the Shadow Chancellor if Marcus Rashford's the leader of the opposition. Because his tweet yesterday was absolutely brilliant when Priti Patel said she's disgusted that England players that have given so much to our country are being subject to vile racist abuse on social media. And he said, "You don't get to stoke the fire at the beginning of the tournament by labelling our anti-racism message as gesture politics, then pretend to be disgusted when the very thing we're campaigning against happens." And I just think it's absolutely amazing to see these young men who really seem to have a moral compass as well as football ability. So they've absolutely amazed me. And if only our leaders showed the kind of leadership and respect and dignity that those young men have done, and that so many young people in this country do all the time, then maybe we wouldn't be seeing scenes where people break into a stadium, kick people's heads in, spew up over a shop, like just piss everywhere in the middle of London. You know, it's that massive contrast of these people who really hate the taking of the knee, don't seem very proud of the country at all. And this was a Jonathan Pye video, which is well worth watching. They don't seem to have any pride in their nation at all. And yet these people inspire people to be proud of them and proud that a country can create such inspirational figures. So that's the massive contrast there, and that's my moment of the week.
I mean, I can remember everybody laughing at me when I was going on about sort of racist scum who refused to take the knee. And for me, what was going on after that match really showed that I was damn right. And it is a war between good and evil going on. And it's so critical. Love your point about being proud about your nation. And how we represent our nation. Sam, do you think UEFA is going to punish us for what we've been doing? Do you think UEFA is correct? Or will you punish us more?
Absolutely. I mean, what we've got to remember is that it was only a week or so ago we were listening to the absolutely harrowing accounts from the attack in Manchester at the Ariana Grande concert, where they talked about ineffective security, poorly trained staff, and we should not have a major football game in the UK. Fans being able to break in just by apparently pushing against a door, you know, it's not acceptable. You know, I'm not a royalist, but the heir to the throne was there. You know, we should have had slightly better security for everybody's security and for our national security. It's a bit of a disgrace, really.
Stuart Sutherland, were we robbed?
In which way? I mean, we lost the game of football, but you know, the team we've got is probably the best, you know, team we've ever had. You know, there's real hope for the future, not just in football, but in the kind of socially conscious people that we want to bring into the world.
And a big sort of rising support for them as well. Because of what happened after the vote. Finally, Mark, is this a nadir or a turning point, do you think?
I think it's probably classed as a turning point. I mean, we're often told that there's this moral majority that are right wing, but now we're seeing that there isn't. And I mean, it was very interesting to see them, and I think that we have to congratulate Gareth Southgate, because he has been an English gentleman, in my opinion, the way he has led from the front, and has certainly, as Gary Neville said, has shown more leadership than the politicians. And I love that there were so many tweets coming out about the guys and saying about all these politicians that have been saying about practice football, not politics. Well, if you do the politics properly, they wouldn't have to.
Yes. But also the kind of the arrogance that sort of relegates these ball kickers to sort of a low. You just get on and kick your ball about that. You're sort of not fit to have political opinions. Of course, they're fit to have a opinion just as much as anybody else in this country, including the politicians. Sort of a really interesting turn of events. It'd be interesting to see how it works out over the long term. Thank you very much. Somebody being very rude about my chairing abilities. It's a weird. I've had a week off. I've had a week off. Here we go.
Now it's time for the big story.
The big story, as chosen by listeners in the poll, was the quote, jaw-dropping fall in life expectancy in poor areas during the COVID epidemic. And it's the Marmot report. Stuart, tell us about it all and then give us your views on it.
Quite simply, the Marmot report came out and it shows that there's huge health inequalities, meaning that if you're just an average poor person in Britain, you're much more likely to die of COVID, and you also have a much shorter life expectancy. The figures are, crazy. You wouldn't imagine the levels, but most people within the Greater Manchester area, according to this, won't see a pension, and it's getting worse day by day. That's really staggering stuff. Sir Michael Marmot is he the director of the Institute for Health Equality?
Yes.
Right. So it's a pretty big serious report that's been dropped on the government's doorstep. It's now up to the government to kind of back up the level up promises they made, because if we're dying younger and younger and younger, and we're at risk viruses at a higher rate because we're poor, something needs to be done, and it needs to be done pretty sharpish.
The report was very critical of the government's levelling up measures. And it wanted much more money spending on people and much less money spending on things. What's your comment on that, Stuart?
I think that's wholly accurate. We haven't seen a great deal of spending per se, but the kind of things that people need to stay healthy and to tackle the kind of inequalities that we have in life expectancy, these are very simple things. These are, access to food. These are access to healthy food, at reasonable prices. These are access to exercise and, being able to get medicine. Very simple things that you would, when you're thinking about countries the other side of the world, talking about a foreign aid budget, these are things that we're not getting right at home. That's staggering.
Mark, is this just something that's cropped up during COVID? Is it just a COVID-related problem? The report suggested that it's much more deep-rooted and historic than that. What's your opinion about this? Will it go away when COVID goes away?
I don't think it will, to be fair. There's always been, as we go up the country, so from down south up through us in the Midlands up to you, life expectancy seems to drop, and isn't it in some parts of Glasgow there are parts where some of them will only reach 50, 60s and so. But it is just the thing. It is about quality of life. We saw a massive jump in our life when we got the NHS, and as we've seen the NHS step back, which is what is going to happen with these bills that they're bringing in, it's bound to happen. The more stress that people are having to be put under, the life expectancy is just going to go down and down until we really, hopefully somebody soon will work out that the life expectancy thing, sorry, not life expectancy, the levelling up thing is just like trickle down economics. It's just a nice phrase. They're not levelling up. They're not levelling up at all.
Sam, the report also suggests that we should place a lot more emphasis. That it should place of the levelling up should be placed on children and young people. Is this, or should we be spending it on working age people, or even, dare I say, older people who were dying in much greater numbers during the COVID epidemic? Is this a good idea?
Well, what we know is if we can instill healthy lifestyles younger, in that early 0 to 5 age is really crucial for setting a trajectory for a child's life. So I do think it's right to invest in that particular age group in particular. But I want to just quickly go back to your point about spending money on people and not things. You know, as you know, in County Durham, our bid to the Level and Up Fund consists of fixing a bridge, building some psychopaths, and making half a bypass. Now, I don't see how that levels up our deep-seated inequalities that we experience in County Durham, but apparently that's what it's for. So I just think whoever's writing the criteria doesn't understand what leveling up means.
I mean, this is why I asked the question, because you're absolutely correct. The government, the levelling up money that the government is putting in is, as Mark says, it is really just trickle down in action. And the idea is that it should be spent upon things like bridges and bypasses, and then that money will go into the economy, and the economy will get going, and then we'll all become wealthier, and sort of all our social problems will go away. That's the idea behind it. And the alternative, which if you've got to be so careful that you don't go down the alternative road, which I think is just giving people money to try as a sticking plaster over their current problems. And sort of, so as soon as you stop giving them money, it's just as bad as it ever was. There has to be some kind of way we can find to direct the money so it will accomplish real systemic change. Surely that's it. And I don't think that the government has a clue. I don't think building a bypass is going to do this automatically. That doesn't work. But sort of equally, just throwing money at social experiments, has that not been seen to have failed?
Well, I don't think so. The recent report into what's going wrong in the social care system of the adoption and the taking the kids away from the parent system, the social workers and all that, did say that actually what we were doing with Sure Start worked, getting early help involved with families worked, intervening in families in a soft way before you had to go in with the big guns worked, and it helped families stay together. So, and I think it's those, like I said, early childhood experiences that really shape people and affect things like mental health throughout the whole life.
Thank you. Paul, sort of, is this not just, somebody mentioned that in the chat that they ignored him before, they're going to ignore him again. Are these not voices in the wilderness shouting at a government which does not care? Or have you any hope? I mean, Andy Burnham was weighing in on this one, saying we've got to build on these ideas. Is there any hope that this will accomplish some kind of change?
Well, I'm the kind of person who is boring enough to sit and read a government report. And I read, it's slightly off topic, but I read the higher education one. And what it had all sorts of, in the body of it, which was the justification for what the government was asking. Everything in there, all the evidence suggested that their conclusion was wrong. Everything was you're reading this thing, you're like, okay, I agree with this, I agree with this, I agree with this, and then the end, and the government are like, so we're going to do the opposite. And that's where we are at the moment with this government. They will simply just do things, and that's what they do. They'll say they're doing things for people's benefit, but you were talking there about when I don't necessarily agree that they should stop infrastructure projects, for example. What we need to do is make sure that when you invest in infrastructure, that money really gets to the people who work in the country, rather than trickling up to the billionaires, rather than like paying for these contracts that end up in offshore accounts. That is where we are as a nation. That is where we are as a world at the moment. You know, we've seen the investment that's come in through COVID, and all the investment has ended up with billionaires increasing their wealth. So government invests allegedly in the people, and that money trickles up. So that needs to be stopped. So if the government are going to invest in infrastructure projects, that needs to be highly paid, highly valued jobs for people, and then that money does stay in the economy. But if it's for shareholders, if it's for people who are taking it outside, then no, that is not a good idea. So I think, you know, we've got a huge issue here that is massive and systemic and worldwide. The other thing I'd like to bring up as well is there's a video that will be going up on the Socialist Educational Association Northeast's page on YouTube soon. We did a meeting on Saturday. I just haven't had time to edit it yet. But there was a statistic in there where it said if you're a man in Stockton, you have the same life expectancy as a man in Ethiopia. Now, that man in Ethiopia will have lived through a famine. You know, like that terrible famine in the early 90s. How terrifying is that? A man in Stockton has the same life expectancy as a man in Ethiopia. Now that is frightening, and hopefully, like both of those those life expectancies will go up over time. But I really don't see any hope for the UK at the moment. I'm really worried about the direction things are going. This is not just COVID. Life expectancy was creeping down for a long time, and we've been talking about it since austerity, actually. And I think, let's look at the royal family, for example. They all lived to the 90, 100. Like Prince Philip nearly lived to his 100 because he was well treated, well fed, and he had a pretty easy job. Yeah, he might have worked hard, but his job wasn't taking his life away from him. But working class people, their job does detract from their life. You know, people when they retire don't live for very long because they've had a hard job, they've done difficult jobs, and you know, they've maybe not had the right diet and stuff. But I think it's a lot to do with work as well. So we need to have a look at the way our society goes. But that statistic in particular was terrifying. I did mention this on Saturday's show, so some people may have already heard that. I can't believe I didn't mention Jeremy Corbyn coming on the show as moment of the week, because that was a pretty big deal. But, you know, not to say that people with white beards, that you're the second best one, John, because we know that you're the best person with a white beard on Socialist Think Tank. But anyway, sorry, I'm digressing. But
I think that sort of, I'm amazed you didn't mention Jeremy Corbyn as your moment of the week, because
people are more important. Normal people are more important, which Jeremy Corbyn actually said himself the other day, which was really nice.
God bless you. Thank you. Stuart, would you like to sum up for us? I mean, sort of ultimately, is this report the beginning of change, or yet another voice in the wilderness? Oh, Stuart's on another go slow, I think.
I can't imagine it being any different. We've got a government who won't take on.
No, you're back. You're fine.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're fine.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, we've got a government who basically won't take on any credible evidence. You know, they don't listen to experts, not interested in facts. So giving them a report based on real life experiences and facts and figures is going to do nothing for this government. They'll do naught for us.
What's your Unite community event about tomorrow, Stuart? Is this what that's about?
Well, part of it, yeah, because it's all the same problem, isn't it? Unite Community is having a day of action tomorrow regarding the universal uplift, the £20 that's part of the universal credit. Well, Boris has said that he's going to take that away. You know, without question, and that's a huge cut for people. So there's cancel the because the time frame on that campaign has moved up significantly since Boris said that he would be ending it as soon as possible.
I mean, I think that's going to be an economic disaster for the Northeast. Right, okay. Just I'm going to. I've realised that I've forgotten to ask Sam and Mark their moments of the week as well. So I'm going to go because I got overexcited about the football. I'm going to go back and we'll just take a few minutes to ask Sam. What was your moment of the week? I'm so sorry. It was I mean, I've deprived you of your moment of the week.
It's okay. I was going to take a broadly football adjacent one as well, and just the absolute hilarity, which was all of the schools deciding what they were going to do for Monday morning. I thought it was brilliant, and all the parents reacting to, my kid can go in at 10:30, but I've got to go to work at 7:30, and I do want my child to go in late. I don't want my child to go in late. I'm happy my school is letting them in late. I'm not happy. Just very funny to watch. Not the best way to manage school start and end times during a pandemic when everybody's supposed to be in bubbles, to just allow people to arrive whenever they want.
I suppose that's true. When I was a teacher, I always gave people snow days whenever possible. I think one of the great experiences of school is the odd occasions when you get let off. It's a major part of your school life. Mark, what was your moment of the week?
My moment of the week, it's kind of the start of a moment of the week, really. Obviously, on Sunday we had the football. I had to start work at 8 o'clock on Monday, but there we go. But it was also on Sunday, we saw the first flight of commercial flight of Virgin Galactic, okay, which is obviously Dickie Branson with his little planes. It hasn't gone into space properly because the Kármán line, which is where space properly begins, is 100 kilometres up. But his plane went up to 80, which is something in America, but which we won't go into that. But what I think it's something that we now need to really start thinking of as socialists. We are now seeing the start of the commercial space race and how that happens, to how the global south could be left behind. People who aren't rich, a ticket on this, and also the new Shepherd rocket, which is what Jeff Bezos' project is, will cost around $250,000. And how many people want that? Are going to be able to afford that for a 90-minute ride? And then there's all the stuff with SpaceX, and I do think it's something that we should start talking about, because if we're not there in the conversation, the right can then dominate, especially with commercial space, which is going to become a major thing soon, especially when you think about mining on asteroids, etc. I could carry on for the whole show, but I'm going to shut up there. But there's a lot of things that we now need to think about.
Is all this space hopping, is it not a climatic disaster, Mark?
The space hop depends on what you think, because now with a lot of the things now are reusable. There's a great video, if I can find it and not blast it out in over here. There's a great video from somebody called Tim Dodd, and it's worked out that the average per astronaut, it's just a little bit more when you consider about the reusability than actual airline travel. When you consider what is reused, especially with SpaceX, and virtually everybody now, even the Russians are now trying to reuse rockets, and so getting them to land, which was meant to be impossible about 15 years ago. People are doing it.
Don't you find it strange, everybody? I mean, I'm talking to the listeners now, that we're talking here about a space age where people will go up in rockets and mine asteroids and come back, science fiction come to life, and we're talking about people dying sort of in poverty in Stockton. Do you not find the contrast alarming?
John, it's not just people. It's not just people. What they will be doing is sending out robots to do this mining. You send the robot up onto an asteroid, and it will then land on the asteroid, and then it will go around on its orbit, and when it comes close to the Earth, they'll just send back all the minerals and what have you. It'll be good for the electronic car industry and things like that, but it won't. It'll be part of what will help with the fourth industrial age and making human labour obsolete.
Yes, and we've seen the films, Mark. They'll become self-sentient while they're on that asteroid, and then they'll come back and eliminate human beings. That's the future. Okay. Right. Other questions.
You got to prepare me for that one, John.
Fabulous comments. I have to concentrate on my guests, listeners. But my golly, I've been on again, and I get a little glimpse at your comments, and they're just fantastic. Sam will catch them all up later. Right, we have 3 other questions, and we have 25 minutes. So everybody, I've told everybody they've got to be very, very self-disciplined. Samantha, we've got a guilty plea to the murder of Sarah Everard. And a huge kind of outrage at the time. Has anything come of it?
Well, I think myself and a lot of women had great joy in being able to say out loud that Wayne Couzens is a piece of shit. Right, because we weren't even allowed to say that. We weren't even allowed to say that a woman was murdered by a police officer, because it was all like, oh, you've got to say alleged, you can't say his name. Let's not, all police officers aren't bad people. This is a man who was known, he was nicknamed the rapist. And he casually went to a B&Q and bought kit to murder a woman. He went out intentionally and found a woman he didn't know and killed her, right? And the women who gathered in her name to grieve were beaten up by the police. It's just a monumental state gaslighting, the type of which we haven't seen in a very long time. And at the same time, we're told, oh, this is all for your protection, mind. There's a virus out there. But there's rugby people and football people dancing, practically licking each other's eyeballs, and they can just crack on. But no, you can't have a group of women standing together mourning, not just for Sarah Everard, because we all know women who have been abused. Most of us are women who've been abused, and this has just got to stop. Believe women.
But the point, my question was, is anything being done? I mean, what I've got here is an end to rape review, which basically makes no recommendations whatsoever. Operation Soteria, which suggests that instead of concentrating on the credibility of the claimant, we look at the actions of the accused. We've got massive increases in domestic violence during the UEFA tournament, absolutely off the scale. I mean, has the thing not got worse after it? Despite everything, it's just got worse. You must be in despair, surely.
Well, I am in despair because it doesn't ever seem to get better. You know, Me Too was supposed to be a moment that made things better, and things are still not right. It's going to take a very, very long time. And unfortunately, we need leadership in our country, which helps make it not okay. At the moment, we're still being berated by the ruling party for saying really controversial things like rape has basically been decriminalized in this country, when rape has basically been decriminalized in this country. You know, we're not allowed to state facts anymore because it doesn't tally along with the state sanctioned truth. So unless we get rid of that and face up to the real problems we've got, and the fact that it does stem from deeply entrenched misogyny where women are not believed and they are treated like objects in our society, then we've got a long way to go.
I mean, there's a double whammy here, isn't there? There's institutionalized misogyny, but there's also the kind of appalling way that society views and treats women from the classroom onwards. Sort of, I mean, the police have basically said that the solution is beyond them. What kind of things do you think the solution therefore involves?
I mean, the solution is obviously not beyond the police. I mean, there's stories of this particular man being caught doing indecent exposure. Like I said, he was known to be a creepy, like pervy guy. That's what people describe him as. So I think if they can't see it when it's that blatantly in front of their eyes, then they need to shape up. Really, they are if anybody's got that level of intelligence about people's behavior, then it's got to be the police, hasn't it? But no, it is it is a thread that goes throughout our society. We have made progress. I've got a very feminist husband. there are lots of feminist men out there in a way that there wouldn't have been 10, 15, 20 years ago. And we will make progress, but we do need leadership.
Mark, I was going to ask you a question, but I'm just going to throw that to one side. Jane Strange, it feels like this society has deep-rooted problems with allowing the abuse of anyone who can be vulnerable in any way. Is this a problem which is specific to women, or is this a problem which is specific to vulnerability, that we're a society which takes advantage of vulnerability?
I do think that we are a society that does like to take advantage of vulnerability. I think women are the major people that affects at the moment, and unfortunately, for some reason, for the last however many millennia, men have been on top, and we're coming to a time when thankfully that is slowly changing, and the question is going to be how. But there are other people that get affected. Wheelchair, disabled people take advantage of them, the elderly. I mean, I've got lots of friends whose parents are getting to that time when they're not as compos mentis, and the number of people that try to trick them and get money out of them.
Yes.
That does need to be thought of. It's just a very selfish culture, be that sexually and otherwise. I do think though, but granted, there is a lot of cases of women. But I mean, I know for myself when I've been, because I'm in real life, I used to shoot a lot of music gigs. Coming back on the train from Birmingham to Wolverhampton, I as a man on my own, I'd not felt safe, and sometimes I've even been with groups of women who are coming back from the clubs and what have you. And I've been there with my camera bag with fairly decent cameras, and Neil and I can probably talk about that more later. But and you're just worried about your safety. So I can imagine what women feel like going out alone, and it's like you hear all the things, call me when you're back, pretending to have phone calls, walking with the keys in the hands, and trying to make conversations with people just to feel safer, if you see what I mean, and pretend that person is your friend, so that the person following you doesn't.
Yes. Thank you, Stuart. I mean, we're talking about much more than making people feel safe, though, aren't we? When we're talking about violence against women, we're talking about, according to The Guardian, an epidemic of violence against women. I mean, sort of speaking as a man, sort of, how do you feel we need to, as Marcus said, to change this culture, to change things around?
I mean, there's no simple answer on that one, is there? But one thing I noticed where with the final of the football was the number of posts that people were putting out saying, please don't beat up a woman because because your football team lost, and it was shocking for me to see the level of, people are basically pleading for women's lives there, and why isn't the government, taking a similar route where they're straight up just saying it is not right to beat women? Why are they skirting around the edges?
One of the things that they're talking about is a statutory duty of the police. Some really good comments. Women are still told how to keep themselves safe rather than men being told not to attack women. Increasing cases of cuckooing going on in the disability world. 6% of low-paid jobs are taken by women. Education is key. We have become a society of discrimination, abusers, and uncaring about our actions, and from the top down. Did you sort of? And we're supposed to be proud of our country, eh? Paul, what have you got to say about all this?
Just firstly, I'd like to say, like, we've got I think it's our most gender imbalanced panel we've ever had tonight. But what we lack in women, we make up for in how amazing Samantha's speech was earlier on. That was powerful, and I absolutely loved it. And I think everyone should listen to that. Incredible stuff, and it made me emotional actually. And I think if you listen to what Samantha said and weren't emotional, then there's something wrong with you. But we did discuss this, Laura and I. We were talking about like having four men and one woman on the panel tonight, and we really deliberately don't do that on Socials. Think that we're quite like women led. There's a lot of the time where there's an imbalance where there's more women than men and so on. And we talked about it. Actually now though, just like the police said, oh well, the police can't solve this problem. Sort your own house out then. Sort it out. Because there's one of your own that's done this and you've covered for him. And I know they're covering for people all over the place. I know someone who is being in abused by her ex-husband in such an awful way who's a policeman. And I know this happens. This happens every day and they are covering for him. They're doing this. This is what they are doing. And people will say it's not everyone. Doesn't matter whether it's not everyone. If they're not going to speak out about abusing women, if they're not going to say, actually, that rapist, the one that we call the rapist, maybe he shouldn't be in the police force. Maybe he shouldn't have that power. Maybe he should be, dealt with in a different way. If you're not going to say that when you know, then where's the hope? So there's 4 men on this panel tonight, and I know the 4 men on this panel will absolutely agree with me. We've got to teach our friends. We've got to teach our sons. Like, if you hear something that's about violence against women, tell someone. That's disgusting. No, you know what? It's attitudes like that get women raped, that get women murdered. You know what? Some idiot will hear what you say and they'll think, oh, actually, they're just like me. It's okay to do this. We'll go and do this. Because, there's... I don't know what else we can do apart from start to back one another up. We've got to look after our communities. We've got to be looking out for each other all the time. We've got to be supporting one another. We've got to behave. We're not individuals. We're not that stupid Thatcherite idea where there's no such thing as society. There is society, and this society is favouring predators. Whether that's people who earn ridiculous amounts of money and pay off their victims, or whether it's people who have some sort of little amount of power wandering around with a uniform and raping women. Because you know what? Those same police officers were the ones who did nothing about those England fans like fighting each other and stuff, or the similar mentality to in Glasgow when they caused all the havoc up in Glasgow. They went at that vigil and basically kicked women's heads in response to someone being murdered. Come on, we're better than this.
I'll just make one comment about the imbalance on the panel, which has been a number of people have commented on it. I don't think that this is a women's issue. I think this is very much a men's issue, and and Lilith's. It's not what does she say? It's not a woman's issue. It's about male propensity for control and violence, and until we realise that, we won't get anywhere with it. Fabulous comments, everybody. I'm sure Sam's making note of them. I'm going to move on now because we really are down to 2 topics in 10 minutes. Mark, what are the messages for Labour coming out of the survival, I won't say success, in Batley and Spen?
I mean, I obviously we've just had it was last week, wasn't it? The Batley and Spen by-election. We were talking about it in our AGM, and of course everybody had written Labour off, and we thankfully we got the victory with 320 odd votes, wasn't it? Sorry, the numbers just.
323.
Pardon?
Yeah, 323.
Very close. Now somebody said to us, "Well, that's because George Galloway stood," and yes, but there are. The simple fact is, Labour's lurch to the right is going to leave an open area. There was back in the 90s. Peter Mandelson said, "Well, the left will always vote for us. They've got nowhere to go," and that's obviously something that I think that they need to realise. It's no longer the 1990s. People will self-organise, and I think they have to really, if they are a broad church, think about that, because the worry is if the nucleus is found, and has a nucleus now been found in Batley and Spen that can only move forward, because we are stuck within a two-party politics. I do wonder, and I think that Keir needs to come out with policies, because if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything, and I think that's something. And he's just dropped the ball so many times, and he needs to improve on that.
Is Labour back, Paul?
No. It's scraping a win in a formerly safe seat where something absolutely appalling happened. You have the sister of the person who was tragically murdered by another far-right predator. Let's not beat about the bush here. And obviously a lot of people will have that affinity and will remember that moment where that happened, and will have that allegiance to that person. I think that person did very, very well in that election. And she left Labour off her leaflets, which is telling. I think the Labour Party, under its current direction, are in deep trouble. There isn't much inspirational going on at the moment in the Labour Party, as much as I'm the chair of my local constituency. I want to see some inspiration, and we're trying to bring it, and we're sitting there in meetings and we're not allowed to say anything inspirational, and it's a really, really, really difficult time. But I've already said this before, I don't think necessarily the answer is in Westminster politics, and I'm starting to believe that the Labour Party in its current incarnation is there to stop any progress being made, and just as a buffer. That's the way they're behaving at the moment, as a buffer to make sure nothing actually does change. And if the Labour Party do happen to fall into power by accident, then it will be in order to keep things going as they are. Yeah. Maybe rejoin Europe or something. I think that's it, but that's not what people want. People want systemic change, and that's what I'll be campaigning on.
By the way, it's not true that nothing inspirational is ever said at the CLP. When you got Paul Daly as your chair, that you get lots of inspirational things said. Sam, Sam is saying that Leadbitter is the future for Labour.
Well, I'm happy to hear that, and I hope that it means that our new selection of Labour candidates is going to come from the communities in which they want to serve. Because I think if we make the mistake of parachuting another raft of Oxbridge-educated friends of the party into places like Bishop Auckland and Sedgefield, we will find very quickly that we can't get them elected because people won't stand for it anymore. The role of a MP has changed in the last 15, 20 years. People want a local champion who supports them, who knows where their kids go to school, who knows the streets and knows the issues.
Thank you. Stuart, last thing, what was said was whoever won, Starmer suggested that it was a turning point, a tipping point against divisive politics. Did you see that in the results?
I didn't see it in the result. I saw it in the candidate. I mean, the candidate was phenomenal. How she got the job is questionable. Is it repeatable? Are we going to have 650 Kims? I don't think we are if we're going about it the way the party currently is.
Yeah, thank you very much for those comments. I think the general feeling of the panel is that it wasn't quite the wonderful result that it was made out to be. We've got a lot of work to do. Last 5 minutes, Paul. Should we boycott the Winter Olympics? China? Should we boycott China? The EU's made a non-binding agreement that they're going to do so. What do you think?
Right, so I do agree with cultural boycotts of states that do human rights abuses. Like, so there's a fella just behind me here, Nelson Mandela, who was described as a terrorist under, like, you know, by Thatcher. David Cameron was in a little group where they, like, wanted to hang him and what have you, you know. So, and then now he's this cultural icon for the whole world, someone who was anti-racist, brought people together, was anti-apartheid, and he did, like, wonderful things. And so that wouldn't have happened without the cultural boycott of South Africa, where people refused to go and perform there. And a lot of people did this on their own without states. It was before the states started to do this. It was individuals saying, I will not perform in South Africa while I can't perform in front of a mixed audience. I will not play sport there. So these cultural boycotts do have a role. However, we are a bit all over the place on this one, with regards to, like, let's say what's happening in Gaza at the moment. Now, if we aren't going to do a cultural boycott of Israel, and if that's going to be the worst thing in the world we can possibly do, then why are we picking and choosing in this manner? I don't really understand. I think one of the important things that people need to respect is consistency. And also, we've got a little, you know, I think that we aren't perfect on this. Europe aren't perfect on this. We're seeing the rise of the far right in Europe. We're seeing people endangered. We've got LGBT people in Hungary, etc., who are facing discrimination as well. So, you know, whether or not China specifically should be targeted as the worst thing in the world, well, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that.
Sam, do you think we need to do something about China?
I think in post-Brexit Britain, we need to be careful. And unfortunately, this is the consequence of going into Brexit, is we now need to look at who our trading partners are going to be when we make these ethical decisions. Had we stayed in a larger trading bloc, maybe we'd have had a bit more latitude to make these decisions, or maybe Europe would have stopped us making the decisions because obviously they controlled everything we did. So, bit above my pay grade. I think we've got to think about what is best for the global population, including the people of China. But I definitely am not a big fan of what the Chinese government are doing right now, no.
Mark, Hong Kong, WeChat, Uyghurs, Tibet, Taiwan, an economic and intellectual attack on Australia, building nuclear silos, hundreds of them, threatening the world at the 100th anniversary. Are we not in need of a new Cold War?
Oof, the Cold War, that could be quite an interesting thing. But do we really need that? I think obviously we need to keep an eye on China and what it's doing. But and there are rumours that it will go over America very soon. I mean, but the thing about the Olympics, one thing I would say is it better to go to the Olympics, and if you can, actually protest against that. One of the things that when I saw this question in the email that came out was I'm reminded, I'm a Wolves fan, of Stan Cullis. Now he was this is going back around the war, but in 1938 England played Germany. Obviously Hitler was at his beginning of his powers, and of course the whole England team did the salute apart from Stan. Mm-hmm. Do we need people to do like what Stan did? The guys who did the solidarity salute at with the black gloves at the Olympics. Do we need people to be maybe taking the knee during these Olympic Games? I know the Olympic Committee have said that they don't like political shows, but should they be doing that? Shouldn't screw what the Olympic Committee say. Should we be making a political statement there when there are?
I'd love to talk to you, Neil, because my thing on the German Olympics was that they were a massive propaganda triumph for Hitler, and sort of not the opposite. But we're out of time. Sort of, Stuart, a last word on a Chinese boycott.
This feels like rather than morality driving our decisions, this is more economic and military decisions driving what we're deciding is our morality for the day.
Thank you. Loads of opportunity for people to comment on that. We ran out of time to give it the depth that it deserves. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening in. As you know, what happens now is we take a break while we listen to No Passaran, and then when you return, mercifully, Samantha's in control. I'm going to try and keep my mouth shut because I've said far too much the last few times, and so don't ask me because I just put my head in the noose, and we'll see you in 5 minutes time for the interactive chat with the people on the line. Thank you for listening. Thank you for coming back, and hopefully see you in 5 minutes. God bless. Bye everyone.
My name is Jack Atkinson, I'm not afraid, and I live and die by this vow that I've made. The only good fascist's a dead one, they say, and around the rear we are. When I first left all them months ago, told him I'd come not to kill but to cure. Well, for an ambulance driver my shot's pretty sure, and around the rear we are. There'll be no passaran, no passaran, no passaran today. Fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no passaran here today. I told my mother, now mother, be strong, for the left way is right and the right way is wrong. And you can stick that on my grave when I'm gone forever. We are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. Fascists have come for our freedom. We ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. Cast may be cast, and the cast may be cast, but you armies of darkness, you best do your worst. 'Cause to win, yeah, well, you gotta get past those first, and around we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom. We ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here, no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom. We ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. Keep the red flag flying there.
Hello, and we're back, and it's me, and I am talking. Haha, I have the control. That's the problem with us women. You give us an inch and we take a mile. We take over the whole show. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. 146 comments. Brilliant. Amazing. Thank you very much. During the show, Mia found a meme and sent it to me because she couldn't put it in the comments. So I sent it to the WhatsApp group, which I'm a member of because I'm a member of Socialist Think Tank. You could be a member of Socialist Think Tank too. But for the people who aren't in the WhatsApp group, Paul's got it and he can share it for us so you can see Mia's meme that she sent me. Yep.
It's up.
Is it on
It's up.
now? Is it on now? See, I can't see. He can see. He's got the technology. I can't see. But yes, no one is born with hatred or intolerance. Isn't that nice? And it's so true. And if there is one thing to be grateful for, is that our young people have these footballers to look up to, you know, and they are looking at Marcus Rashford and looking at all of the other England football players and thinking, yeah, you're pretty cool and you've got values, and these people who spread hatred about you are dinosaurs who will die out thankfully. And wasn't it lovely to see after the horrific defacement of the Marcus Rashford mural, how it was covered in notes of support and love hearts and solidarity, because actually there are more of us than there are of them, and those attitudes are slowly dying out. But unfortunately, the odd racist still thinks that their voice is worth hearing. So we need to all make a point of making sure that when people do make that joke that's a little bit iffy and you hear it, you just point out that it's not funny. Don't give them a minute to think that you share their views in any way, shape, or form. We need to make sure racists know that their views are abhorrent and that we won't stand for it. And that's our job as white people, actually, because we need to make sure that people of colour, black and brown people, aren't subjected to what racists think is what everybody really thinks anyway, because it's not, and it's not acceptable. Neil's talking about the mural tonight. He's popped a link on so you can look at that and feel slightly better about society as a whole. Neil says he doesn't like those backpacks. You know what? In a previous life, that was my job. It was to teach people how to use slings and baby carriers. You didn't tend to have them facing outwards on your back. That would not be a carry that I would recommend for anybody. Tim says, question for Mark. When will the Midlands version of Socialist Think Tank begin, and how can we find it?
I've already put the answer in the chat. I've already put the link to the Facebook. But I think one thing I want to talk about is also, we don't just want it to be West Midlands. There needs to be other regions as well. Let's props to Jane with the South East. When are we going to have the South West? When are we going to have Liverpool and that area? It's not. We've just got a couple of us in the West Midlands, and I've got a few things planned, and I'm hoping for my fellow comrade to find her feet, and then we can do some stuff. We'll hopefully do some stuff on chain makers, and that's because that's something a lot of people don't know about that. And the thing with chain makers is, and this is one of the things I'm very, very passionate about, is it will not have men on it, because the chain makers dispute was about women. It was a women's strike, and so I think it should be a women's only thing. And I hope to. That's one of my things I wanted to do if we hadn't done the local thing. But there's a lot of things I've got. People in our WhatsApp will know I mentioned a few names, and you probably hear me and Leanne mention a few of them. Well, hopefully you'll get to meet them, because I think it'll be good to see local people, not just from the West Midlands. Let's other people. Let's see the other groups start as well. Talk to Paul and Laura about doing that. Let's see some more. Let's get people talking.
We're actually set at the moment because James has set the website up where whenever you get a channel, you'll get a channel on the website, and then you'll be able to select that. So basically, we're trying to set it up so if anyone wants to do this, they can just do it, and that's it. I think it's not about us as I think a lot of people, when they want to do something, they want to be like the center of attention. They just want to do it for them. We want everyone to be out there doing this. People who are like them, people who are relatable for their area and stuff. That's what we want people to be doing, and whatever we can do to help people set those things up, we will. So we'll help you set up a podcast or a YouTube channel or whatever, and we'll promote it, and we'll do all those things. And because that socialism is building things together, it will help everyone if we get the ideas of socialism out there. So that is what's going to be happening, and it is very exciting. And there's all sorts of structural things for members as well that are coming up that I can't necessarily talk about at this stage, but soon there will be more news as well. So let us know, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, by the way. Do that. Even if you're not watching on YouTube, go and do that now.
what Paul is trying to say is that he is here to help you seize the means of video production. And you should absolutely take that with both hands. Again, I said this in the WhatsApp group the other day. This is a social justice and equality issue. People like Boris Johnson are raised to believe that they were born to rule and they were born to be listened to. And they speak as such, and they train from a very young age to speak in public. Earlier on, we talked about Sarah Everard, and I gave a speech, and there was lots of positive comments and reactions to that. But it's very rare, actually, that somebody can actually deliver something like that without having some kind of practice and some kind of training or experience. Because actually, when you just deliver something without any practice, it just tumbles out your mouth and you get confused and maybe you cry or something. So it's really important for everybody to make their voice heard. You've all got stories that are worth listening to. And when you're talking about things like the chain makers and the projects that I've been involved with, the women's banner group, unless we tell our own stories, they won't be told. Unless we record our own history, it won't be recorded, because it's much more convenient for the ruling class to pretend like all we've ever done is work in factories and be a nuisance. Well, actually, we've done lots of things that deserve recognition. And unless we stand up for ourselves, it won't be recorded and it won't be recognised. So yeah, all of that stuff. Ooh, what are we talking about now?
Have you seen Paul comment there?
You go for it. You read it.
It says that it's just the last one that was on. They try to convince us black brothers and sisters suffer more mental illness. What can we expect when they've given no fair chance from the beginning? I hope Rashford helps change that paradigm. Absolutely. I think a lot of the time it's the circumstances people find themselves in, which can be one of the drivers of mental illness. I think a lot of mental illness is because people are in awful circumstances, and you're like, well, I'm not surprised that you're suffering because of the circumstances people find themselves in, regardless of skin colour. It's just disproportionately black and ethnic minority people find themselves mistreated systemically.
I love how Rashford's come back with that really powerful statement, and he's not being quiet and he's not apologising and he's not backing down, because he knows that there's loads of little black and brown boys looking up to him. And I'm sure that's a weight that he feels very privileged, but also it means he's got to think about everything that he does in the public eye. But I think he played that very well, and I was very proud of him, as I know most people are. Stuart, you want to come in there? No? You're muted.
Anybody remember before in the election in 2019? Momentum did something.
I was muted. No, I was just nodding away in absolute.
I think Stuart's running Internet Explorer. I think that's his problem.
Get Alta Vista on.
Oh, Alta Vista.
Oh dear. What were you saying there, Mark?
Does anybody remember back before the 2019 election? Momentum ran some. This is when I first came into Zoom. They did some Zooms about My Tory Story, and it was basically getting people to just put a video together. It could just be on your mobile phone about how the Tories had affected your life, and I think it's such a cool thing. I mean, they had Ken Loach on it, being a political education sec. It's one of the things I suggested once was a large event that happens around the conference, that we should get people to do political videos with their mobile phones and laptops they have with them as a session, because it is now incredibly easy to produce these things. You just need Zoom, really. which is what we're doing this on, and a few other things that Paul's doing his stuff on. It's very simple. We have a lot of things we can use now.
Speaking of Ken Loach, I can't help. I'm just going to share the meme that Laura did when he sent us that little message. It's always nice to see that one when he's talking about the Miners' Gala. But it's just the statement where he said, "From Ramsay MacDonald in the 20s to Kinnock, Blair and Brown to the wretched Starmer today, they have consciously delivered working people bound and gagged to those who exploit them." I just think, imagine if Ken Loach said that about you. Like it's Ken Loach.
Definitely off the cool list, aren't you?
But yeah, I had to read that out the other day, and I was trying to do it justice. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's not just, unfortunately, the leadership. I mean, I can say that. I can say this. We're obviously looking at a boundary review across the whole of the country, and constituency secretaries and chairs in the north, in County Durham, have been sent what the Labour Party is suggesting might be our boundaries, and it looks like a retreat. It looks like we're giving up on County Durham. It looks like, and it doesn't give me hope, certainly, because the way they've reorganised it makes it look like the place that I live will be Tory forever. So I very much hope that's not the favoured version that the Boundary Commission accept. But it doesn't seem to be a version that actually favours the Labour Party very much. So they might. It's hard times.
I've just seen a new poll that's come out, which is which doesn't favour the Labour Party very much either, and it's over the past few days, and it's the Conservatives 43%, Labour 32%, Lib Dem 9%, Green 6%. That's Salvation, and that's the one that normally favours the Labour Party.
It's hard. Mia's got another cracking point. She says that people treat mental health issues as a psychiatric problem, suggesting there is something wrong with the person instead of recognising that mental health issues are a result of things that happen to them. A lot of people convinced me I was mentally unstable because of how I reacted to the systematic oppression and discrimination I was on the receiving end of. Now, we may well all have our own personal experiences, probably not the same, or not as much as Mia's experiences, but it's all about how we treat mental illness and disability as well. Is it a fault with the person, or is it a fault with the environment that the person was in, or a mixture of both? And it goes back to that stuff we were talking about earlier, John, about what do you change in society if you want to change outcomes? Do we move everyone into something like the Metro Centre so they can live in a utopian capitalist paradise, or do we look at providing them food and shelter and hippie ideas like that Stuart was saying earlier? Lilith says black people were often diagnosed with schizophrenia in the 50s and 60s to 70s due to their beliefs and cultural mannerisms, cultural norms. And there was another thing about black youths being unfairly placed in sort of special schools, wasn't there? Educational subnormality. Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. Right. NHS bill. What do we think about the NHS bill that will have its second reading of Parliament tomorrow? Now, correct me if I am wrong. This is the bill that moves towards integrated care partnerships rather than what we've got at the moment. Yes, Paul?
I'm not hugely aware of what's going on, but I think Jeremy Corbyn, when he was on the show the other day, was basically saying this is what he was on about Remember when they said that it was Russian spies had leaked these documents, and they like basically remember when like he presented those NHS documents and they said like basically the NHS is for sale, and there will be American healthcare providers like provide, because I think people didn't understand how the NHS was going to be privatized. It's basically they give them to people who are going to take money out of it whilst also accepting public money. So public money will still fund it, but you'll get a poorer service because those places will take the money out and take profit out and so on. That's the kind of privatisation. But then they made the story about, well, how come Jeremy Corbyn managed to see these leaked documents? We think he's in cahoots with the Russians, when actually it was just on a Reddit thread. It was like this thing that was just like really readily available on the internet, and he just brought it up, and then they said, no, he's after it's because of the Russians. He's in cahoots with them, even though they have like all these Russian oligarchs that are massive donors to the Tory party, and Russia's probably now, like taxation wise, one of the most capitalist countries in the world. So yeah, he said the other day that he's got an American healthcare provider working in his constituency now, and he's seeing what's happening over time, and so if this is related to that, or even worse, it's already happening. That privatization by stealth has been happening for years, and it's just got rocket boosters under. It's just like, progressive leaders of Western countries have made things more and more for the rich. So that's what we'll see.
Mark, do you want to come in on this? You're muted.
Hoping I wouldn't do that, but sorry. I just posted, because they talked about it on Chris Bin's show, not the Andrew Marr show, a couple of weeks ago, and they've actually cut it out on and put it on their YouTube, and so I popped the link in the chat on Facebook. But we got to remember that that the GPs have always been private things, that they have a contract with the local health authority to provide healthcare, and they've always been contracted that way. But there's a lot of interesting things that are happening. I don't know if it's happening in your area. Now you can't get painkillers or like I had conjunctivitis. You have to buy the medicine from the chemist. And also recently, if you also can't have your ear syringed unless you have a clinical need, and that's £100. People do not realise how good our NHS was, and I've heard people say that we should always get a prepaid invoice whenever we have any medical care, because it's quite amazing. As a diabetic, I've worked out what mine are. I've got a Libra thing which tells me my blood sugar, and they're £50 a time. It's not cheap. And when I hear the stories of like my friend Chandler in America, who sadly died because he lost his job and had to stop taking insulin, I think these stories need to be told.
Do you want to come in, Stuart?
Will the internet let me?
It sounds like it's working. Go.
Yeah. It's staggering. I mean, there was talk of changing patent laws regarding drugs, which would open drugs that were already costing the NHS several £1,000s a dose to be price matched to the American system, which was £7,000 a dose. And it doesn't take many people on that one drug for that to be a huge cost on the NHS, things like that. Just changing our pricing systems regarding painkillers and how we purchase them for hospital use will be devastating for the NHS.
Mm-hmm. John, do you want to say anything on this?
Well, I just echo what Mark says about diabetes. As you know, Barbara's diabetic, my wife, and I'm continually astounded that her care continues to be funded by the state. And sort of when you do the calculations of what it would cost, it would be crippling. And there's all these things out there about to talk about what Stuart's been saying, that the cost of paracetamols to the NHS, whereas what you can buy, we can buy them in the supermarket, and the NHS is becoming seen as a cash cow for predators, and that's going to continue, and it is deeply concerning, and you just have to. It goes back to what we were saying. We have a society where illness is seen as a business opportunity. And what kind of a world are we countenancing here? Where that guy in America says that he has a duty to charge as much as he can get for his medicines. A duty, a capitalist duty to do so. We move into a very worrying future, Sam.
Go on, Mark.
Don't you think it just I'm reminded of what Bevan said, that illness is not something, not a luxury to be, I can't remember the quote, but that quote from Bevan. But there's something even worse. I remember reading something about what Obama said once, that he wouldn't give Medicare for all because of the loss of jobs in America, which I thought was quite shocking, that it would cause a problem with employment. But we have private healthcare over here doing the same things. It just doesn't. To me, a human right is healthcare, but a human responsibility is also, I think, has to be that you have to contribute towards society, which is something completely different. But I do think that we have to talk with rights with responsibility.
Absolutely. One of the ways that I see healthcare being privatised, like right now, is just through the NHS either refusing to diagnose or treat certain conditions, or providing such a long wait that is inhumane, and families will do anything to try and speed things up. So perfect example is, unfortunately, my own children, need occupational therapy, which is not available on the NHS. And I'm not able to pay for, so I just have to wait until the point where I can push the local authority to pay for this private occupational therapy that my children need. And I've waited 5 years so far. If it was possible for me to pay for that, I would have paid for it. Of course I would. We're talking about occupational therapy that my child needs to be able to toilet independently, and it's the same about sensory processing issues. It's the same with diagnoses for autism and ADHD, especially in adulthood. It's very difficult to find a GP who will forward you for a diagnosis for those things. And that's really worrying. There are actually NHS trusts at the moment that don't diagnose autistic spectrum conditions, and it's literally down to they don't diagnose them, by the way, because there's no treatment for them. So the argument is that if we can't treat you for it, what's the point in diagnosing it? Get your head around that one. So Neil says you can't get medicines for asthma on the NHS either. I mean, I would chase that, because you definitely should be able to. I
think.
Jane Strange, good, an important link there. So if whereby you can lobby your MP on the bill.
Absolutely. I had a frustrating thing today where I went to write to my MP. It was about the £20 uplift to universal credit, and about how that uplift should be mirrored in legacy benefits as well. And I did say, I do know that you voted against this previously, but I'm hoping that and I know that you haven't signed the early day motion about legacy benefits, but maybe you've had a chance to change your mind. That's me being an optimist there. Speaking of Tories changing their minds, and Tories breaking the whip, there was an interesting one today, wasn't there, on the aid? So it said in the manifesto that they would give like 0.7 in aid, and they've gone down to 0.5 or something like that.
And I think this is a manifesto commitment that they've honoured, but Cameron was against the idea because it kind of reduces your standing in the world, and from his point of view, don't know. The way it's dished out needs to be looked at, and the way it reaches the people needs to be looked at. A lot of the time it's used as an international bargaining chip to say, oh, well, we've given you this international aid, therefore give us access to your resources, etc. Like, it is that kind of thing. It is a bit of a tit-for-tat thing, and I don't think people realise that. So there's this jingoistic thing where Boris Johnson's saying, oh, no, we shouldn't be giving money to other countries, whereas actually it's not as altruistic as it looks when they do it. So David Cameron's like, look, you're idiots. You're going to lose out on money for doing this. And he talked about losing international standing. What he meant was, like, you're going to lose a lot of potential
leverage
markets. Yeah, leverage markets and things like that. Whereas Boris Johnson's just like, he's just like, even to his own side, he's a bumbling idiot who, even for a big old raging capitalist who wants to exploit people, he's not even very good at doing that. He's just he's just good at very short term kind of stupid being an idiot things, and we've elected a clown, haven't we? Can't even do what his party's meant to do.
I mean, it also costs jobs in the UK because we don't just send out blank checks, to here's X number of million, go spend it on what you need. What we do is, here's 400 million pounds in aid for medicine that you must purchase from these British companies, So when we support for those jobs.
I mean, it makes no sense in terms of honesty and decency and helping people in terms of morals. It makes no sense in terms of economics, as Stuart has pointed out. But it's also a disaster in terms of international relations, because the countries which actually we deal with say, well, where are we going to get this money from? China. And they just do deals with China. Which, by the way, is much worse for them, because the Chinese, my God, they extract a cost for helping. And they'll build you roads and all kinds of things. But there's a price to pay to China when they've done that. So in terms of international relationships, it's a disaster as well. It's just the most stupid international thing you could possibly do. And being generous with our international aid just made so much sense on so many levels. And it's typical of these blinket Tories that they just say, oh, we can't afford it, so we want to spend the money on track and trace. And that's it.
Yes, we found a new friend that we need to give contract to, so we'd rather give that money to them.
Speaking of track and trace, there's no way it can work. No way. I went to a rally in London and I wasn't pinged. And then I went to Wimbledon and I sat there with 15,000 people and I wasn't pinged. There's no way that no one in all that area and all the trains and all this stuff hasn't tested positive for COVID at some point. So track and trace clearly isn't working. I'm hearing like other people are getting pinged all the time. And I was like prepared for it. I'm double vaccinated and I'm careful. I wear a mask for other people's benefits and so on. But yeah, there's no way track and trace works.
when you think about it, though, didn't Google and Apple do some kind of app where, if you come into contact with it, somehow it remembers who you've come into contact with. So if that had been used, they could send messages anonymously to all the phones that they've come into contact with. That's something that Google and Apple did on their smartphones. So you'd all be given a number, and it would literally just collect those numbers, not like I've come into contact with Paul, but 123 has come into contact with 234. So if 234 has it, a button's pressed on that thing, and it then sends out a message to all the numbers of the people they've come in contact with. Why did we need to spend that money? There was no reason. We could have used the Apple and Google things that were free for us to use.
Dido Harden needed some money.
Yeah.
But this was news to me as well, like exactly what you're saying. In order to make it work for an app with like ethics and the rules, they don't know if you've been pinged. There's no like central database of all of the people who have been pinged. Therefore, the app, when it tells you to isolate, isn't legally binding. They can't prove it. And all this time, again, I just feel like it's us poor people like follow the rules and rich people do whatever they like. All the time, everybody around me is being like, oh no, my phone's beeped, therefore I legally have to stay in the house for 10 days. And I feel like it's been an open secret among people in the media that actually you don't really have to do it because they can't enforce it unless you've actually been phoned up by a contact tracer so they know who you are. Oh,
that's the point, Sam, about all these photographs about people at Wimbledon, and sort of how did Tom Cruise get to Wimbledon to go and see Wimbledon? How what
And then the World Cup
rules
final. Sorry, the European Cup.
Sorry.
He then went across London to go to Wembley for the European Cup
How
final.
did he get into the country to watch it? And then all those pictures of Philip Schofield and Holly Willoughby sort of sat 6 feet apart in the studio, sort of showboating about how socially distanced they are, and sat next to each other without masks. And Dr. Hillary, whatever he is, sort of not wearing a mask, having told people that morning that they ought to be wearing masks, and it's blatant. And they don't give a shit, and and you're absolutely right. Sort of, poor people like you and me are doing the decent thing. What bloody idiots we are! And sort of on the one hand, we got all the wealthy people doing as they damn well please, and then we've got all the nutcases doing as they damn well please at the other side of things. And we just plod on doing the decent thing, paying our taxes.
To see that when I went to Wimbledon, there's like we were sitting around in a stadium. We're all sat right next to each other, no gaps or anything like that. You're all just sitting there next to each other. And then at the end, they come out and they interview the winner of the match. And they come out, and then the person who comes out and interviews the winner of the match, they have this massive long microphone that's on this stalk, and they're like stood 10 feet away interviewing them. And you sat there looking, you're like, right, and then they wander off together, and then they like go really close to each other afterwards, and it's just, it's like everything's for show, and it's like it's the same as like in the Euro finals when they're sitting there in the studio and they're all like socially distanced from one another, and they're all like placed in this thing and sat in their certain area, and then like all the fans are doing that, and then you see photos of them later jumping around with the fans, and it's like they're only doing it. It's all for sure. And I feel like that might have always been the case. People never really took this seriously at the top, which is why Boris Johnson was shaking hands with people and what have you.
Neil Terry's been a comic genius in the comments, mind. He's when we're talking about pinging and tracking and tracing and the app and that, he's saying, is it just me that's got an image of a few cans with loads of string and they're all tangled up and there's some poor sod trying desperately to undo the tangles? And he says in terms of Tom Cruise, that was his mission achievable to go to both with. They did it with the Danish royal family as well. They shipped them across and let them sit in the royal box without doing any quarantine, because again, the rules are for us and not for them.
Did you see that
Chris
meme about
yes?
Tom Cruise? By the way, sorry, did the one where
No.
the little car that brings on the ball. There's like a picture, the little car that brings on the ball, and then there's another picture of Tom Cruise in a car, like, hey, and that's how we got across London.
That explains it. Chris says tonight it looks like Sunderland General Hospital's gone into full lockdown, followed by the decision by other NHS run centres such as Sedgefield Rehab. Do you not all feel like you're living in a parallel world? Like, I feel like I know loads more people right now who have COVID than I have at any point during the pandemic, and we are relaxing our rules, and people are going to be having freedom parties and snogging each other and doing all kinds of acts, and I am very confused between what I am seeing with my eyes and what I am hearing as the state-sanctioned narrative about how safe we are.
I mean, it's not the only one in Wolverhampton. New Cross Hospital has stopped visitors, get people going in to see people in hospital. My father's currently in another hospital in the West Midlands, and we're allowed to send one person a day in for 3/4 of an hour to sit with him. And you just wonder how much that is going to change. Let's remember, today as well, we've had 50 people die. That's 50 mothers, fathers, sons and daughters who have needlessly in some ways died. You know, and are the Tories now bringing in herd immunity to save the rentier class?
Yes, is your answer there. They're risking it, and overtly risking it. They're hoping that immunization, vaccination, will mean that people can get it without overwhelming the NHS. And what caused the lockdowns previously was not a damn about what happens to ordinary people, whether they die or not. What caused it was that they could not do with the NHS being overwhelmed. And now they're running the risk. They're taking a risk with our lives and our NHS that they'll be able to get away with it because of vaccination, that they'll be able to take the lid off. And people will get it, and there'll be mainly young people now who are getting it, and most of them will recover, and it won't be all that bad, and the NHS won't be overwhelmed, and then the death figures won't go through the roof. That's they're gambling with our lives.
See, I think a lot of the new cases, though, I think it's schools, and I think it's always been in schools, but they weren't testing people. It's asymptomatic kids in schools who are now testing positive for it, because that's the way diseases travel best in our country, by having the schools open. But they don't want to admit that, because then that would be an admission that keeping the schools open caused the previous ones. What you can see now from the figures, I've got them on my phone here, the deaths just aren't going up in the same way as they did before, which is really good. It's really positive. I don't want everyone to be absolutely terrified out there. But I think what they're trying to do at the moment is that I think they're trying to cover up the idea that schools were the driver of the deaths before, because it may have been that, like, not lots of children were getting this and what have you, but they were getting it, and they were giving it to other people. They were giving it to their nanas and granddads, and then they died. And this is something that I think we've said all the way through. We've been on air throughout the entire pandemic nearly, and we've said this all the time. Schools are driving infections, and they didn't want to admit that because they needed childcare so people could go to work.
Just interrupting everybody and changing it, Jackie Nash, you missed an incredible first half. These people were on fire in the first hour today, particularly on Sarah Everard. You can pick it all up on the podcast afterwards. Sort of Paul will tell you about what is available. But my golly, As sort of, I would recommend you watching the first half of this show. They were spot on.
Go on then, Paul. Do you want to give us a rundown of everywhere you can find
You're
us?
better at it than me. You do it.
Of course, we are on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, and on your favourite podcast app. All you have to do is search Socialist Think Tank. There is literally tons of content on there. In fact, far too much content. Paul, you need to slow down. You are a content-making machine. And of course, we were here on Tuesdays at 9 for Political Unmuted, and there's also Socialist Night Live on Saturday. Is it at the 9 as well?
Yep.
I'm not on that one, so.
You will be at one point. We just need to give you a rest every now and then.
Absolutely, you don't want to wear me out. And also, you can become a member of Socialist Think Tank. Being a member of Socialist Think Tank is free. You can pay money if you want to, but it does not give you any extra benefits except that warm, fuzzy feeling in your stomach of knowing that you are helping to create a better world where socialist ideas are available to everyone to be heard, in voices that they understand, in words they understand, and accents that are the same as normal people that are around them every single day. So please do support Socialist Think Tank. If you are finding us for the first time and you are not subscribed on whatever platform you are looking at, please click subscribe or like or follow. That will make Paul very happy because he's following those stats really closely right now. I need to stage an intervention at some point and tell him it's not about numbers. Quality over quantity is the name of the game with followers. But we do have really, really good followers, and we really appreciate all the people who are in the comments, who come back week after week after week. Speaking of coming back week after week after week, if anybody wants to be on the show, you too could make the leap, just like Mark has today. You could be here and talk to us about these things. It's not that scary because actually you just talk to yourself and you're under stairs cupboard like me. And we will look after you. And you're perfectly welcome to come on. I will see you tomorrow, Chris. I've got a full council meeting tomorrow. This will be interesting because the Liberal Democrats have tabled a motion calling for the government to keep the £20 universal credit uplift. So that will be interesting to see how all of the people across the council vote on that one. I think it's quite not surprising to hear that I will probably be voting for that. I have to say probably, by the way, because it's against the rules for me to go into a council meeting and already decide what I'm going to vote for. That's right, isn't it, John?
I don't think so.
I thought you were...
I think that it's interesting, but just for ordinary council meetings. You go in predetermined to ordinary council meetings because you have a group decision.
Okay. Is it just other things
I
like
think it's only things like planning meetings,
okay,
and things like that where you can be predisposed. But
oh no! Chris says it's been taken off.
What?
What games are they playing? What games are they playing? Oh, I'm angry about that. Anyway.
Well, they're like, Chris won't like this, but like, I'm not saying he's part of the coalition, but they are in a coalition at the top of that organisation. Maybe all the people who voted for it didn't feel that was that, but they will certainly be behaving as a coalition.
I have to say, if I was a Conservative, I would have been upset that they put that motion in because it's already like splitting their group. That's what I thought, but
yeah.
Oh, that's disappointing. I'm sad about that. Oh well, like I said, I sent an email to the MP today about it. What more can lowly people like me do? Hey,
Will you be putting a motion in?
too late now. Too late.
Come on, every meeting. Chuck it at every meeting.
Is this jiggery pokery then? Do you think the is that a thing? Is that a thing?
Do you think there's some kind of strategy going on? There's some kind of... Some people are trying to assert their dominance within the
maybe. Well, it could be innocent, couldn't it? It could be like, well, you know, our overlords don't like what we've done, so therefore we'll withdraw the motion. Or it could be like, we'll put in this motion so they don't, and then we'll withdraw it late.
Chris says it's never too late for a motion. According to the standing orders, it is.
Yes, it is.
Anyway.
Chris, maybe put one in for next.
Before the meeting. It's
Yeah.
too late for a question now, even.
Frustrating. Anyway, it is time for us.
Who was it? Was it Mark Wilkes who was putting that in? What did I see that? It was Mark Wilkes. It's strange, is that, because that would have been decided as a group, is it that they've all? Am I right in thinking, Sam, that they've already made the decision and cancelled the £20? That decision has been made.
The government is saying it's going ahead, and there's not planned to have a vote on it. No.
I mean, it may just be that it's been withdrawn because there's no point in lobbying now that the decision has been taken. It may just be that. It may be as innocent as that. Mm-hmm. I'd love to talk to Mark Wilkes about it, because he I can't imagine them silencing Mark Wilkes.
Lilith says, protest from the public gallery. I hope to see some protesters there tomorrow, because we are submitting a motion about the Medhamsley / Hassickfield detention centre, and asking council to not support that, or to write something. I haven't I have read the motion. But yeah, hopefully the No to Hassickfield people are going to be there, so that'll be nice to see them.
You can always watch them on our one of our past shows as well. We did a No to Hassickfield thing, and very interesting what's going on there.
Socialist think tank and Hassickfield, and it'll pop right up. That's the joy of search engines. And then
Chris Hood is saying it's never too late for a motion. That's how it is. And so he comes off that and he says, but never too late to speak. Unfortunately, Chris, yes, for me, it is. Yeah, it's sad but true.
Are you enjoying all of your free time, John?
So that today I cleared out the bedroom cupboard, and it was the bedroom cupboard in which all the family, you know how to everybody, and whenever anybody dies, you end up with this box full of stuff, you know, and so I've spent the day going through all these boxes with all these death certificates and various little bits of papers and my father-in-law's trophies that he won for darts and things like that. Just going through all these. So I've had an absolutely lovely time. However, not quite as socially fulfilling as sort of talking about things like the £20 uplift and Hassickfield detention centre. So that I'll have to leave that to you to do the decent thing, Sam.
I will try my best. Oh, Jane has put the No to Hassickfield link in the Facebook chat. Thank you very much, Jane. That's very helpful.
She's a good one.
We could go on forever, and Paul's popped a really good question in the chat, so please do reply to it if you're on Facebook and give him your opinions, but we do have to go. It is nearly 11 o'clock and I still need to go and lock my chickens up, so bye everybody.
Don't forget to count them first.
I will count the chickens, and thank you very much, Mark. It was a fantastic debut. Well done.
Thank you, Mark. Well done.
All right then, bye.
Okay, see you later, everyone, and
See you later.
Thanks for coming.
Keep the red flag flying here.